Yes, believe it or not, despite bears and jaguars often being associated with completely different habitats, they actually coexist in multiple areas throughout the world. So that, of course, raises the question of what happens when these two apex predators meet up. Believe it or not, there's actually lots of documentation of what occurs when these two creatures meet. And it's actually pretty interesting. So let's figure out once and for all what occurs when these jaguars meet up with not one, not two, but 3 different species of bear in their natural habitat. So first off, what are these 3 different species of bear which the jaguar would come across in its natural range? First off, we have the Mexican black bear. Believe it or not, black bears do actually inhabit Mexico and the Hemingway, southwestern United States. Yet, instead of spending most of their time in the desert, they actually live mostly up in the sky islands and mountainous regions around the scorching hot lowlands of Mexico and the southwestern U.S. In a lot of ways, these mountain ranges act as a sort of bridge between North and South America's wildlife, as they tend to be a lot more densely vegetated, thanks to the much more cool and humid climate created by being at a higher elevation than the rest of the surrounding areas. Because of this, these mountain ranges have allowed for these bears to travel all the way from up north, down south in New Mexico, and vice versa, where jaguars have been able to travel all the way from Central America up into Arizona and New Mexico, thanks to these mountain ranges. These mountain ranges were also once home to another species of bear, the Mexican grizzly bear. While there is evidence to suggest that this bear still exists in modern day, as far as we know of, they became extinct in the 1980s. Yet we know for a matter of fact that they would have interacted with Mexico and the southwestern United States jaguar population. We also know for a matter of fact, down in the Andes Mountains of South America, spectacled bears also occasionally come across jaguars. So, really, who wins in these confrontations and who preys upon who? Well, you see, it's pretty complicated. So, let's start off with what happens when jaguars come across everyone's favorite, the black bear. Well, believe it or not, thanks to some incredibly rare footage and some extra stinky stool samples, we know for a matter of fact that the southwestern United States and Mexico's jaguar populations actually prey upon black bears. Yes, you heard me right. These cute, spotty little cats are actually capable of taking out fully grown black bears, primarily females and juvenile male individuals, though they'd likely also take out cubs on the occasion. While they aren't as well known for it as some of their other feline cousins, jaguars are actually capable of taking out very large prey, including but not limited to tapirs, cattle, and fully grown caiman. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that they're also capable of taking out bears. Even Elfie, one of the famous jaguars, known for traveling across the Arizona-Mexico border, has been reported killing a fully grown black bear. So this event likely occurs a lot more often than really anyone would expect. Yet again, it's still very likely that jaguars normally avoid larger male black bears, as their large size and sheer strength would make them a very hard prey item to tackle. And yes, when these jaguars are going after large prey, including bears, they will straight up tackle their prey, usually ending their ambush by biting straight through their prey animal's skull. After all, jaguars have the strongest bite of any big cat for a reason, and that is so they could tackle prey larger than themselves, such as hogs and even bears. But this raises the question of what would happen if a jaguar were to stumble across a bear species significantly larger than itself, such as the Mexican grizzly bear. While hunting bears may be risky, the average Mexican black bear isn't too much larger than the average jaguar. While for a comparison, there was a much larger size difference with the Mexican grizzly. Even though the Mexican grizzly bear was a smaller subspecies of brown bear, it was still capable of getting up to 600 pounds. For comparison, the average Mexican jaguar is only about 140 pounds, which is still smaller than any male bear's average size in their range. Additionally, while jaguars are known for taking out some very risky prey items, they still have their limits, such as in the Amazon, where they get even larger than their cousins in Mexico. They still usually avoid areas where larger black caiman are present, because they consider them to be too risky of a competitor and a potential predator. So, by extension, would this same logic apply to the Mexican grizzly bear? Well, actually, no. As for starters, Mexican grizzly bears likely would not have preyed upon jaguars. Unlike their more generalistic black bear cousins, grizzly bears overall tend to be more picky with the prey items which they feed upon, and, as cats aren't particularly fatty, they likely would not have seen jaguars as a food source, but they still would have competed with them for food and territory. While grizzly bears normally don't go after cats, they still will go after a lot of the same prey items such as deer, farm animals, and even occasionally animal carcasses. So, with both these animals being incredibly territorial and also regularly going after a lot of the same food sources, it's inevitable that they would have clashed. Like jaguars, grizzly bears are also known for occasionally killing black bears. And in this particular fight, size does matter. While there's no reason to say that Mexican jaguars wouldn't have also preyed upon Mexican grizzly bear cubs up until their extinction in the 1980s, odds are that these jaguars would have known better than to mess with the adults. Thanks to the fact that they get up to 3 times larger and have claws twice as long, the Mexican grizzly bear would have likely have had won most of these confrontations. Still, that doesn't mean it's impossible for these two species to have had coexisted mostly peacefully until very recently. As grizzly bears tend to be much more docile and out in the open, they likely would have almost never encountered the much more cryptic nocturnal jaguars that lived in their same habitat. Believe it or not, there's actually an incredibly small chance that these two species might still coexist in modern day. But if you want to see me make that video, then first, try to get this video up to 500 likes. And if you haven't done so yet by subscribing or leaving a nice comment, it helps me make more money. Now, getting back to the bears, there's also another species of bear, one much smaller than the bears we previously talked about, which we know for a matter of fact still coexist with jaguars in modern day, that being the smallest and last modern-day ancestor of the short-faced bears, the Andean spectacled bear. And man, it's adorable. The spectacled bear is the smallest species of bear in the world, getting up to only about 120 pounds on average, making them a little smaller than the average jaguar. Unfortunately for them, unlike the jaguars of North America, as these bears live in the Andes Mountains of South America, the jaguars they have to deal with are much larger, with some males even getting over 250 pounds, meaning that these guys are at an even greater risk of being predated upon by these jaguars. That is actually part of the reason why these bears normally avoid areas where jaguars are present. And as jaguars aren't particularly abundant in the Andes Mountains, These bears are almost never predated upon by them. These bears also just so happen to be much more herbivorous and prefer much more sparsely vegetated habitats. So naturally, it is quite rare for spectacled bears to come into conflict with these jaguars. Yet again, rare doesn't mean never. Because jaguars are very generalistic predators and are known for traveling long distances in the search for new territories. Jaguars have been reported traveling up into the Andes Mountains, where reports of them preying upon spectacled bears do exist and certainly have occurred. Yet all three of the bear species mentioned in this video end up running into another large feline way more often. That being the cat of 1,000 names, which I'm just going to call the puma. Believe it or not, pumas and bears come into conflict with each other all the time throughout their range. Yet, because pumas are much smaller and usually shy on average, they really don't pose nearly as much of a threat to these bears, which to me helps to make the jaguar way more fascinating. Overall, nature is full of all sorts of wonderful and incredibly fascinating intricacies and interactions. So, if you want to hear more about those, then please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. I try to make animal mini documentaries every single week, all for you guys, and YouTube is my main source of income. So please do those things, and I'll hopefully see you real soon. Goodbye.